It's that time of week again. Welcome to the Ultimate Intimacy Podcast with Nick and Amy.
Welcome.
Inside it. Today's podcast, you just have the two of us. We're going to talk about a really amazing quote that our good friends Greg and Julie Gorman with Married for a Purpose always state. And I think we've mentioned this a couple times in previous podcasts, but we're going to do a whole episode on this subject. What you feed grows, and what you starve in your marriage dies. And although it's a simple saying, it's so, so powerful. And I've thought about that and even reflected on Amy's is mine's marriage and looking at other marriages. And it's so true when if we have negative things in our marriage, like for example, you see a lot of spouses that maybe start nitpicking at their spouse and it just grows and grows and grows and to the point to where there is nothing their spouse can do right in their eyes. Everything they do, it's going to be something negative or something wrong. And that's a great example of how what you keep feeding yourself or keep feeding your mind is going to grow. I think another great example is, if someone keeps telling themselves, I hate sex. I don't want to have sex. I hate it. If they keep telling themselves that, it's going to build and keep growing to the point to where it's almost going to be irreversible. And so I love how they talk about just like grass or a weed or anything else, if you stop feeding that or stop watering that, eventually it's going to die and just be gone. And I think that's so true with what we do in our marriages as well too. So
Agreed.
you don't have any
Agreed.
thoughts after I'm
Well,
ranting?
of course, my mind wandered off into my flowers. I
Yeah,
have
that's
become
true.
a flower gardener this
I
year.
shouldn't have said
You
anything like
said
growing.
growing, and
Yeah,
I was
and
like
she's like,
picturing my
oh yeah.
awesome backyard right now. So we redid our yard, and I decided I wanted wildflower gardens. And sorry, guys, just give me 1 second because the women are like, "Oh, I like flowers," but I have these beautiful, like we're in the desert too, so like it's hard to grow stuff, but my backyard is flourishing with flowers, zinnias, cosmos, like the whole wildflower. Oh, it's beautiful. And so that's where my mind went.
Okay,
But
well,
I was thinking of like all the energy that I've had to put into it this year, right? I actually started harvesting my seeds in the house, right? When it was still cold. I took care of them daily. I was nurturing them, right? And then I planted them outside and I made sure that they had sunlight and I made sure that they had the right water. And I
yes,
like
you did. Yes,
sometimes
you
I even
did.
talk
Yes,
to
you
them.
did.
Just kidding.
I never heard that, but
Sometimes I'm like, you're
like
looking
what? Who's she talking to?
so
She's
pretty.
crazy.
Anyways, like I just thought about this year how like it just started out with this little tiny seed and I put so much nourishment and nurturing into these beautiful like plants, flowers, and they've blossomed and
And now you're reaping the reward of
I'm
it.
totally reaping the reward of it. And if I kind of tie that into our marriage, like there were times where we both were guilty of kind of putting other things first. If I put my front yard and put a lot of energy into that and neglect my backyard, it's going to look like crap. The front yard's going to look better, and vice versa. Like I could do so many different analogies with this, but like when we were both kind of neglecting the marriage in different ways, we've talked about our story, whether it's putting business first, putting kids first, whatever that is, you can start to see the marriage relationship wither. So like there we left town for a few days. It's 110 degrees here and I wasn't able to I have watering systems on most of my plants, but some of these require like really deep watering and not constant watering. And so we were gone for a few days and I come back and here these plants have kind of withered a little bit. They needed a little pick me up. And sometimes in our marriage, we just need a little pick me up. And we speak about this all the time that it's not that hard to just kind of make like sudden little shifts like, "Oh my gosh, like this needs attention. I need to water my marriage in this area," right? Whether that's intimacy, whether that's friendship, whether that's dating, whether it's emotional connection. Like there's all these different things that like we can tell when our marriage is getting a little bit weathered and it's dying a little bit. And I love that quote that the Gormans gave because what we feed grows. And the positive aspects of marriage, the intimate aspects of marriage, the closeness and the friendship, those things can only grow if you are constantly watering and taking care of those, right? Like when we neglected date night for years and years
Yeah.
when our kids were little, we could feel that in our relationship. And so
sure.
I think this episode is really just like what this looks like. Maybe some different, I think we're gonna get in like more the latter, like things that Nick versus me thinks that, relationship needs to grow. So
No, I think that was a great analogy because it's so true. We often think that everything's going to kind of stay stagnant if we don't do anything, but that's not true. Just like the
right.
flowers, if you don't do anything, they're either they're going to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you constantly have to be doing things to keep them growing, to keep them healthy. The second you start neglecting it, they die.
Right.
And I think that was a great example because our marriages are so much like the same way. We can't just be stagnant. In fact, and going back to the saying, what we feed grows, what we starve dies. If you have negative things in your marriage, you need to learn how to starve those things, right? Like if you have negative thoughts about your spouse, if you have a negative outlook on maybe something, if you're always looking at marriage like being a horrible thing or your spouse bugs you in certain ways, as you feed that, it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna continue to grow and grow and grow and get to a point to where nothing in your marriage is going to look good. Nothing your spouse will do is going to look good because you're constantly feeding the negative. So hopefully we can talk about in this how to starve the negative, right? Instead of feeding it, how to starve it. Because then when you starve it, that will go away and you'll start to recognize all the good things in your marriage. And we've talked about this in previous podcasts as well. And I think this goes in line is so much of like our happiness in life, or marriage or anything else, it has to do with our attitude. You see so many people that you're like, man, how could they have a happy life with all the things that they're going through?
Mm-hmm.
Or you look at other people and you're like, man, they're wealthy, they look like they have everything they need, they're healthy. Why are they so bitter and ornery and just negative to be around? And again, I think that really comes down to, what we've been feeding, you know, in those different things. And it doesn't just apply to marriage, it could apply to anything, right?
Well, and if you really think about this quote, what you feed grows, what you starve dies. You think of like the first half of the quote being like super positive, right? I'm feeding it, it's growing, that's all positive. What you starve dies is more negative. But I think like both aspects of this quote can be equally positive.
For sure.
Because like if you think about it, what you starve dies. We want negative stuff to die, right? That's a positive thing that negative stuff dies. So if you're like, okay, we never want to have porn use in our marriage. We never want to have toxic fighting in our marriage. Like those kind of things, when you starve them, like if I was to starve my plants, never give them water, never give them sun, they die. They don't come back.
Don't exist
They
anymore.
don't come back,
It's as
right?
if they never happened, right?
Right. And yeah, things could come back in marriage. But when you actually starve it, where you're setting boundaries, you're saying this is not, both of us, this is not going to be allowed in our marriage. We're not going to do these things in our marriage. We're going to combat this so it never comes back in our marriage. Like I think that starving till it dies can be a really positive thing too. So this can go both ways.
And one of the simple things you could do as a couple is, get together and say, hey, what are the negative things in our relationship that we don't want? And what are the things that we do want? And kind of make a list of those things, right? Like, I wish we didn't have this conflict, or I feel like this, and really list out what those negatives, and then say what is contributing to having those negative feelings or those negative things in our marriage. Because I think once you like write them down and look at them, you can really identify what is feeding those negative things, right? Like, so, if you're a couple that fights a lot and you don't want to have that conflict, what things are we doing to cause that conflict? Am I triggering things? Am I pointing the finger? Am I bringing up things from the past? What are the things that are constantly feeding that, which is going to continue to make us fight more often? And I think that'll really help identify what those things are, what you don't want and what you want. And then as you talk as a couple and say, okay, what can we do to starve these things, to not be feeding into them, so that these things, get out of our marriage, whatever they are. And, I bring up sexual intimacy again. Not because I always talk about that, but just because of all the messages that we get from so many couples that it's just like, my spouse doesn't want to have sex, therefore we don't have it, or I don't like to have sex. Well, if that's an area in your marriage where, there's that negativity for whatever reason, why don't I like it? What are the things that are causing me not to like it? Well, I have to, it takes too much time. I don't feel like I'm ready for it. I feel like it's just for him. Okay, those are great things, right? How do you stop feeding those things and replace it with positive things? Let's do it to connect. How do we connect more as a couple? What are things that we can do to make it more enjoyable for her or things like that? So,
Great example. Not shocked by that example.
well,
No,
I
it's important though.
the only reason I bring it up is because is that not what one of the biggest things that we constantly
It's
hear?
the
I mean, I'm
biggest
trying
thing for
to,
most men, and the biggest thing for most women is we do not feel like teammates. I do not feel like a teammate in my marriage. I feel like I do everything. I feel like I literally am exhausted because he doesn't step it up. I don't feel the connection in my marriage, therefore I don't want to be intimate. That's what
yeah,
I hear.
yeah,
I think it goes both ways. When it comes to like emotional intimacy or connection, like more outside the bedroom. Okay, so yeah, so same kind of thing. Like, what is causing that? And what do I need to feed my marriage so that that aspect or that attitude about that will get better, right?
yeah,
So yeah, you want more connection in the marriage, you have to do something about it. And feeding shouldn't be hard. Feeding should be easy. What do I need to feed my marriage or my connection to help our intimacy, our emotional intimacy, our pursuing, our flirting, all that stuff? How do I help that grow? And that, like you just said about the sexual intimacy, it takes a conversation about it. It takes a positive attitude about it. Like it's instead of nagging that, oh, you don't do anything right, so I'm going to do it myself. Now I'm too tired. Like, okay, how do we have this conversation so we feel more balanced? How do we find more harmony in our home so that we can feel more connected at night? How do we find more time in our relationship, right? Like, okay, this is a whole nother conversation. I'm sorry to go off, but like, I feel like sometimes we make marriage harder than it really needs to be. And I'm not saying in any way that marriage isn't hard.
yeah.
It can be
It
really
is.
hard, but I think what makes it hard is things that are out of our control, obviously, right? Like we're dealing with health issues, trials, death, like all those other things that we
Finances.
can't control. Sometimes we can control the finances, but the things that we really can't control, that can make it hard. I totally understand. But when it comes to things that we can control, like that's a whole different, I feel like sometimes we make it harder than it needs to be, and we just need to do things. We just need to like do better at fixing the things that are wrong, right?
Well, and I go back to your analogy with the flowers, right? Like, what do you have to do to get them to grow? For the most part,
Not a
you're
ton.
not a ton,
Not a
right? You're
ton.
just giving them water, right? So that
I
they,
make sure they have sun or not too much sun. That's not, and I cut them. I cut them and I trim them and I spend a little bit of time, quality time, right?
yeah, my point is you don't have to do much to make them grow and
Right,
flourish. And I think the same thing is with our marriages, right? And
right,
a lot of it is just our thoughts, um, and the little things as well
right,
too. So I think the
right.
same things with our marriage. It's not a drastic change. It's just starving the things that we
Mm-hmm.
don't want and feeding the things that we do
For
want.
sure.
And I think for many of us, we feed the things we don't want and we're starving the things we want. Like how many of
Mm-hmm.
us have stopped going on date nights just because we maybe get lazy or don't want to plan it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
I mean that's just a simple thing,
Or we
but
decide to use financial as an excuse, even though you can do date night at home all the time, right?
yeah. Yeah, or as a husband, maybe we aren't romantic, we stop doing the little things. There's a million different things that this could look like, but my point is it really is simple little things. We tend to focus our attention on the negative
Right.
versus the positive.
So let's throw a situation into this and see how this applies to this phrase. What you feed grows, what you starve dies. Let's talk about phone usage in homes. Okay, so you're both on your phones. Everyone's addicted to their phones. They're amazing. We have these little computers in our hands nowadays, right? We can find out the weather. We can text people. We get constant, if you're a mom, you're getting constant notifications teachers, schools, your kids, their kids' friends, parents, whatever. It's constant. For a lot of husbands, maybe that it's that way, or maybe it's a lot of work stuff. The news bombard us. Social media. We are all, anyone that has social media is like, oh, I'm just gonna open my app because I'm bored, right? Like you're gonna get on one of the apps because you just want to swipe, and then you
Yep.
get sucked into it for a long time.
No.
When it comes to that quote, okay, so you think, okay, I phone addiction is kind of wrecking our intimacy. We're both like waking up and grabbing them, or we're both looking at them right before we go to bed instead of connecting intimately or even just emotionally. We're picking our phones over each other in the evenings. We are looking at them on date night. Whatever that looks like in your marriage, maybe it's hurting your marriage in some way. And so step back and think, okay, what can I do to start? Because phones are not all bad, but how do I starve certain aspects of phone usage so that that part dies down, right? And maybe it's setting a time limit. Maybe it's saying, we do this at my house. The other day, I looked at my daughter who's almost 18 and I said, no phones at the table. Go put that away, please. She had it sitting on the table and she looked at it a few times and I'm like, that is my number one rule. Like when we're having family dinner, we're not going to have phones at the table. You can do that after, right? Like that's so simple. But that what that does is it feeds our family dinner time, that unity, that connection time. We have a house full of teenagers, and we actually at this stage of our life this year with everyone's schedules, we can actually eat dinner tonight every single night. They're home by 6:30 p.m.
Which is,
We
yeah.
eat together every single day almost, and that's really important to me to. I mean, she'll be moving out next summer. So it's like, that's important to me this year. I'm going to make sure that phones are not wrecking that. And you just have to like set rules and stick to them. That's really all it comes down to. And I think we get lazy with the sticking to them part, right? So if you want more connection in your marriage, say, okay, how do we set some rules with each other that we're both on board with? And how do we stick to that? That is how you starve negative things impacting your marriage. You have to stick with them.
Well, and you hit on it earlier as well. What we starve, right? But also what we feed grows. So,
Right.
like for me, like I've noticed that my technology use has probably gotten worse. Like I keep feeding it and it gets a little
Mm-hmm.
worse and worse. And I'm like, I gotta get control of
Yep.
this, right? And so again, like the more we're feeding something or doing something, it can get to a point where it kind of gets out of control and overtakes us.
Right.
That could be with, hobbies, friends, different things like that. And so again, going back to it, I'd encourage you to make a list of the things that you want to die in your marriage and the positive things
Mm-hmm.
that you want to grow in your marriage.
And don't just make a list, then go make a plan, right? So your next marriage meeting, Monday, whatever, marriage Monday meeting, Sunday, whenever you do it, go to your next marriage meeting as a couple. Your kids are in bed, you're sitting in bed, you're sitting at the table, whatever you want to do. Me and Nick like to have our marriage meetings out on our walks or in our backyard when we're sitting outside. Figure out, okay, like seriously, get a list and be like, what we want to feed, what we want to starve. What are the things we need to starve? What are the things, how do we feed these positive areas, right? And then make a plan. Okay, we're going to set a goal to not do this week, or we're going to set a goal to do this week and keep it simple. Like, I think we overload ourselves because like, oh, there's all these things we need to fix. Like, we
Yeah.
talk about habits turning into habits, right? So, like, setting a habit, but really turning it into a habit is what I'm trying to say. So, if you say, okay, we're going to starve this, then we need to do this for 30 days straight so it becomes a real habit. And that's when you know that like something has been starved out because you start looking at each other, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is so great that we're not even on our phones after 7 p.m. every night. I feel more connection between us.
Yeah,
That's
our marriage
great.
has changed. I know there's certain aspects in our marriage that have completely changed, like maybe habits that we had
Mm-hmm.
before. Amy said this often, like in some ways, she's like, Nick, you're a totally different person. Like you don't even what we struggled with before, there's like no sign of struggling with anymore. Hopefully that's a good thing. But you can change habits and different things
Mm-hmm.
in your marriage and the things that you don't
Absolutely.
want to have the things that you do want. And that's what we've worked really hard in our
Mm-hmm.
marriage to get rid of the things we don't want, let those things die and be gone, and to grow the things that we do want. And yeah, like Amy
Mm-hmm.
said, it takes work, but like we said earlier, it's just the watering. It really doesn't take that much work for things to just blossom and grow like crazy.
So I personally have to really work on this one all the time in our marriage, and that is like trying to remember that intimate time is good for the marriage, not just for him. I struggle with that. I'm just going to be completely raw and honest right now. Like a lot of the time, I'm like, again, I say those words that we're always like, don't say these words. And I struggle with those. And that's probably why I say them. I'm talking to myself. But sometimes I think in the back of my mind, like, oh my gosh, we just did it like 2 days ago. You never heard that before, right? Never. And sometimes I have the attitude that it's more for him and it's not for us. And I'm working on that. That's going to be a continual progress in our marriage. But like I have to, okay, I want to feed my attitude and my mind. Being intimate is a gift from God. How do I feed that? Well, I try to stop thinking it's for him. Like you mentioned that earlier. I was like, that's a great one. Like a lot of women that are just like, again, or it's just a chore. It becomes a chore. It really does start in the mindset. So how do I starve that mindset of negativity and try to be more positive about it? And a lot of things that, like a lot of the days that work for me is sometimes it doesn't have to be for me. Sometimes it's just for him. And I'm going to be okay with that because I can still enjoy it. But sometimes it is going to be for him because I love him. And so I think, okay, how do I, he doesn't want me to just not enjoy it. I still need to enjoy it. But like, I think just shifting our mindset, like sometimes we can do things for each other because we love each other. It doesn't always have to be like, oh, we're both so excited about this. Like he's not gonna be excited to go to the store and buy a bouquet of flowers and spend money. That's not something that a man's gonna be like, yeah, I gotta go do that, right? Like but that brings me happiness.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and that's how kind of marriage works. And you could call it not transactional, whatever you want to do, but we do things in our marriages to make each other happy. And we also need to learn how to be happy doing those things that make each other happy. Do you know what I mean? That's what when you feed and it will grow, how do I figure out how the things that he enjoys or the things that mean the world to him, how do I learn how to enjoy that? How do I learn to love that? And that's where you can really feed your marriage, right? That's where marriage gets better, is because you start enjoying doing things for your spouse, even though they're maybe not on the top of your list.
I'm glad you talked about that because I feel like if I just look at our marriage, I have no one else's marriage to judge because I don't know, I only know what our marriage is like, other than looking at other people's marriages. But I feel like in our marriage personally, like we've changed a lot that way. Amy mentioned that she enjoys doing things for me because it's important to me, and I enjoy doing things for her because it's important to her. And like we take we take that serious and really try to do that. Yeah, maybe it's not our favorite thing to do, but we do it with joy and intention because we recognize how important it is to our spouse.
Absolutely.
And it really does make a big difference when you do that. It becomes more about like, I want to serve my spouse because I love them and I want them to be happy. And whether it's like Amy hates going to the grocery store, so I try to go to the grocery store as often as I can because I'm like,
I do online
I want
ordering.
to, yeah, now she just hits a button, so I don't need to go much anymore either. But
well, we both work full time in it. Yeah. I'm like, people are going to roll their eyes and be like, really?
But my point is instead of just saying, I don't want to do that and I'm not going to do that, and then you have both spouses doing that and everything gets neglected, as you start doing things because you do love your spouse and it starts being reciprocated and appreciation shown to each other, then it becomes like such a different relationship and marriage full of appreciation and love and just serving one another.
Yep.
So I mean,
I'm pretty sure that Nick wants to really start mopping the floors because he's so excited about taking on that.
Hey, I could share a story about Christmas lights, right? So
we'll share that at Christmas.
Yeah, we'll share that. Just remind Amy and I to talk about the Christmas light story.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Or stories, and I think a lot of you will be able to relate, whether it's Christmas lights or something else. So
yeah, I just think that's really important, is that marriage is sacrifice. If you want a committed marriage, you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit. And I think that's part of feeding what grows, right? Like the more you feed your marriage with maybe things that you don't always enjoy, the stronger your marriage is going to become. Like this can go in so many ways. Like if you look at your spouse and you're like, I don't love doing that, but I know you want me to do that, so I'm going to learn to love that. Like just that attitude alone will feed your marriage.
Well, and I think regardless in life, the more we have to work at something, whether it's, saving up for a nice vacation or saving up for a house or a car or whatever, the harder we have to work at something, the more rewarding it is. And I think our marriage is the same way, right? Like we think, oh, if we kind of ignore these things or or just kind of float through marriage, it'll be better, but that actually isn't the case. The harder sometimes marriage is, or the more we have to work at it, the more we're going to appreciate it in the long run.
Right.
Like Amy and I have talked about often, we went through hell for a long time in our relationship, but it taught us a lot of things, and we've had to work really hard to get to a good point. But I think that hard work has made us appreciate the getting in a good place even much more.
Mm-hmm. I think out of that entire situation for us was just learning how to communicate and not like I don't want to get on here and say we have like this perfect marriage, but one aspect of our marriage that is really good after going through everything we went through is our communication when it comes to disagreeing or fighting. Like I don't think we've literally had a fight, and I can honestly say this, in years.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we haven't had a disagreement.
Yeah,
it
we
doesn't
definitely have
mean we haven't had
disagreements, or
maybe a mild argument or something.
we see things differently.
We might see things different. We might get bugged. But we have
never,
not
never gotten bugged
never
at each
gotten
other,
bugged.
ever.
We're only together 24/7. Never gotten bugged. Just kidding. But we don't fight. We don't fight anymore. We have learned that we wanted to starve that area of our marriage. We used to go give some silent treatment. We could go a couple days. I could go a couple
we
days.
had good fights.
We had some good fights. They weren't super, well, I can't say super toxic because they were toxic, but they were not very kind.
We weren't yelling and screaming, but we would give each other silent treatment, and
we would just stop talking because I'm like, I don't want to deal with you anymore. Like those kind of things where a lot of couples are struggling with this. I know they are. Like some people are just like, I'm not talking about this anymore and walk off. We got to a point where we wanted to start that in our marriage. We wanted to be able to be like, you know what? We are going to be mature, committed, married adults. And when we have a disagreement, we are going to talk through it with love and kindness, even if we're upset. And I think that's one of the biggest. I loved episode, was it 111? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
About if you wouldn't say it to your boss, you shouldn't say it to your spouse. And I remember listening to that and being like, you know what, starting tomorrow, we're going to implement that in our own lives. And we're not going to say or do anything that would be disrespectful, that we would never, not even just a boss, but like a stranger or someone else. Like that shouldn't be acceptable, that we could treat our spouse one way and then treat everyone else in a better way, right? And I remember that being life-changing advice for us, and thinking, okay, we literally should start the fighting in our marriage and only learn to disagree respectfully. And I can honestly say that, like, with practice, you can actually do that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think that's one of my biggest personal experiences of what you starve dies. And that actually feeds your marriage, because we've gone years now where I just feel like, okay, if we have a disagreement or we have conflict in any way, like we're not going to do anything toxic. We're going to talk it out. We're going to be fine an hour later. We're going to say sorry. We're going to hold hands and be fine later. We're not going to have to think that it's going to get worse and worse, or you know what I mean? Like, so anyways, that's just a good example. And I really feel like if there's something you want to starve, then you can do it. I truly believe that.
Yeah. So like we've said a couple of times in the podcast, sit down with your spouse. Here's what you can do. Sit down with your spouse, list the things in your life that you want to starve out of your life, the negative things, and the positive things that you want to grow in your marriage. And again, talk about what instead of growing the negative things, what things are you doing to grow the negative things and starving the positive, and try to switch that around.
Right.
So
right, you confused me for a minute there. I was like,
well, yeah, you could tell I was kind of confusing myself too. So
make sure you start the negative. Make sure you grow the positive.
That's what I was trying to say.
Good job.
Yeah.
No, I got that. I had to like think about it for a second. No, do you have any other experiences you want to share? Or?
No, I think we've shared enough. Yeah. I guess I can end on this is, it's just like when you see people, and I kind of hit on this earlier, you see some people that are really, really, really unhappy, and they're always thinking negative and talking negative, and that's a clear person that is, completely grown in a negative way because of what they're feeding themselves, the constant negativity. And then vice versa, you see people that are like, man, they have a really tough life, yet they're always looking at things through a real happy lens,
Mhm.
and that they've obviously learned to feed the good things and grow the good things in their life, like have a positive attitude and things like
Right.
that. So obviously those are great examples of what people have done, and you can see how that literally changes the way they think about their life and about their marriage.
And I forgot that I took a survey on this. So I'm going to pull that up really quick and we'll
Oh,
end on
cool.
that. Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I asked our audience, come on, internet, maybe.
Maybe.
Okay, I asked our audience, what you feed grows, what you starve dies. This applies to your marriage by Julie Gorman. Which area of your marriage needs more feeding or more attention? Okay, so this is what our audience said. 29% said more communication.
Yeah.
10% said emotional intimacy and affection. 32% said fun, flirting, and laughter. And 28% said their intimate life needs more feeding for more growing. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting that the emotional and affection was only 10%, which is really good. I
Yeah.
mean, that's coming from our Instagram audience. But it looks like communication, fun and flirting, and slash intimate life were all pretty equal in like around 30%. So, anyways, I thought that was interesting. Those are all pretty great because
Mm-hmm.
those are kind of the four I picked just because I just feel like those are real pillars of a marriage.
Yeah.
Like you're the communication, your intimate life, your emotional, just the fun and flirting that we've been talking a lot about. So I don't know, wherever you fall into, one of those categories is it's pretty important to, let's feed that area.
Yeah,
And just pick one, just like we were saying, make it more simple because if you overload your marriage, you're just going to give up and get frustrated. So
for sure.
goal setting should always be simple, right?
For sure.
That's it.
You have a product announcement?
Oh, okay. If you did not get the Sexy September Challenge, it is free. It is 30 days. You pick from mild, spicy, and hot. And it's going to be awesome. I think we did it last year. It only comes once a year, Sexy September. So if you did not get it, let's see, today would be the 2nd of September. Go
Yeah.
grab it. You can start it now. It doesn't matter. You can start tomorrow.
It's
You
only
can
been
start
a
it next
day.
week. It doesn't matter when you listen to this podcast. You can go grab that. It'll be available in September only if you're listening later, and then you can look for it next September. So go to our Instagram at Ultimate Intimacy app. Click on the bio link, and it'll be at the very top. And you'll put in your name and your email. And it also is a great way to subscribe to our newsletter if you're not getting our newsletter. Like we
Yeah.
send out 2 emails every week telling you what the podcast episode is, products,
Great
great tips,
information.
advice, interviews.
Funny
Funny
mishap
stories.
stories. Yeah.
We share a lot of stuff, and with the holidays coming up, we'll be doing some giveaways, some
Deals.
discounts, some Black Friday. Just make sure you're on that. It's great. So,
Go
yep.
check it out at shop.ultimateintimacy.com. And until next time.